Welcome to Quill Sword Blogcast, Special Edition. DeSantis loses launch. Huge Supreme Court win for Americans. Ron DeSantis has launched his presidential bid to much laughter and derision. Seriously, Twitter? Rumble could actually manage such a huge stream, but Twitter? Evidently not. I've heard nothing good about the production or the optics. A DeSantis run is ill-advised at best, and he managed to faceplant straight out of the gate. So far, so bad. Trump is already on the attack. I'm anything but surprised. Trump plans to win. DeSantis doesn't seem to have much of a game plan at all. Trump is ahead of everyone in the field, including Biden, and to his great credit, is swinging for the fences. DeSantis looks like a wishy-washy pinch hitter pulled in as a spoiler. The amateur hour launch did not help. Look, I like DeSantis, but I want my country to get better. DeSantis is not the man of the moment. That man is Trump. Electability is a trope used by fiscal conservatives, you know them as neocons, to get their favorite candidate the nomination. Remember Romney? Yep, that's an electable candidate that didn't get elected. Trump has been elected once and has had more votes total than Barack Obama the second time. They don't come more electable than that. DeSantis is milquetoast in a meat and potatoes buffet. That moderate image doesn't translate to the left side of the aisle, and he's not going to magically pick up Biden supporters from the center. Trump has an established base and appeals to a lot of varied voters. DeSantis isn't bringing anything to the table that will make him more likely to win in November 2024. DeSantis is being used to stop Trump. He is not being set up as a strong conservative president. I'm sure he thinks otherwise, but the evidence doesn't support it. The Mickey Mouse approach to his campaign so far is a really obvious setup. Fancy and very expensive campaign advisors have been making suggestions. Almost certainly the idiotic trip to Japan and the Twitter disaster were their ideas. You'd think they would know better than let their candidate make so many mistakes out of the gate. They do. This kind of nonsense is strong evidence that his advisors aren't in this to get him into the White House. That he hasn't fired a lot of them is strong evidence that he shouldn't be running at all. Yet. Trump will be out to destroy DeSantis. This is exactly what should happen. DeSantis is risking bringing the party down. I know. The media says that Trump is a liability. Bunk. Trump's CNN performance alone proves that he is very, very likely to take the White House in 2024. Those behind DeSantis are hoping for a bruising primary fight to damage Trump. The sooner Trump shoves DeSantis off the stage, the less likely that DeSantis does any real damage to the party's chances in 2024. DeSantis supporters will be upset, and understandably so. But DeSantis started this. Losing his supporters isn't critical. Losing Trump's is. It didn't have to be like this. I hope this is just DeSantis' inexperience showing. Trump had similar issues in his first term. But DeSantis isn't running to establish his name like the lesser candidates. DeSantis is trying to take the nomination, and that will result in a spoiler fight. DeSantis can't win, but he can mess things up. If Trump lets him. Well, it did get Trump back into form. Now for the important part. I rarely do extra posts like this, and might not have done one just for the DeSantis launch alone, but the Supreme Court did something really big, and I doubt most commentators will even notice. You see, the real power is in the boring stuff. Dams look impressive, but it's the stupid plumbing that makes them into powerhouses. The real political power is in that boring legislation and regulation. Those things are written to be as mind-numbingly boring as possible, so most people never know what they really do. Across the U.S., states have quietly passed legislation that lets the state sell a person's property in order to collect the past due taxes on it, no matter how small. That needs to be changed as well. But here's the real kicker. The states are keeping all the money. Sell a $250,000 house for a $2,500 back tax and pocket both the taxes and the difference. It's called home equity theft. It's beyond despicable and quite frequently is used against the elderly whose homes are paid for. See a problem here? Courts all up and down the judicial system have signed off on this travesty despite it obviously violating the Constitution. Until today, in Tyler versus Hennepin County, the United States Supreme Court held unanimously that the state has no right to any proceeds beyond the owed taxes and penalties. Minnesota will be giving Mrs. Tyler back her $25,000. Given that Minnesota has a long history of this abusive behavior, I strongly suspect there will be a lot more to be repaid. Hopefully, a whole lot. This doesn't mean that states can't sell your property out from under you for unpaid taxes. That issue needs to be addressed in the legislatures. Have none of these morons ever heard of garnishment? But it does massively reduce the incentive for states to take property over small tax amounts. This is a huge win for Americans everywhere. It protects property rights from greedy local governments. It protects some of our most vulnerable. And it tells government in no uncertain terms that it must respect the rights of all. Way to go, Mrs. Tyler.